Now, you said that Israel's goal, a legitimate goal, as you called it, is to make sure that Hamas is unable to conduct anything similar to October. But I thought the stated goals early on were to decapitate Hamas, hunt its leaders, and basically, really free the hostages, and have a new regime. Have they achieved that? So are we shifting goals now?
We are not shifting goals. Obviously, they have not achieved the release of all the hostages, which again, as I've said before, is
or
not
any
so.
Or any of them. Or any of them, by I'm saying
there have been over 100 hostage
negotiations, but not by force.
They did also execute a military operation quite early on, where they rescued a hostage. But I don't think we should put the fact that Hamas continues to hold civilians hostage on the Israeli government. It's Hamas that bears responsibility for that.
All right. I wanted to ask you also. You said that nothing short of Hamas surrender, that's the suggestion, would end this conflict.
Again, that's not the suggestion.
All right, let me rephrase.
That's not what I said, so go ahead.
In response to Matt, you said that, when he said that, stopping the bombing could also save Palestinian life, or something to that effect, and you said Hamas could surrender and end it, right? So, nothing short of Hamas total surrender could end the bombing. That's what I just wanted to clarify this point.
That is not what I said.
Okay.
I have made clear before that Israel is conducting legitimate military objectives that we believe are achievable, and capturing or killing the senior leadership of Hamas is achievable. But it's not the only way to achieve that. And my point in saying that about Hamas surrendering is that for all the questions we get, legitimate questions that we are happy to answer about Israel's military activities, it is Hamas that started this conflict. It is Hamas that hides behind civilians, and it is Hamas that could end it today if the people who were responsible for the murder of 1,200 civilians would come out and take responsibility for their actions and surrender and stop hiding behind civilians as human shields.
Okay, well, first of all, the 1,200 include 311 soldiers, as Israel suggested, so they're not all civilians. But
I don't believe the murder of civilians on October 7th was justified either. I don't think we need to caveat it.
Right, okay.
Caveat
it. But let me ask you something. How would this surrender take shape? Because Hamas is not an army. It's not like we're not going to see what we saw, let's say, the Iraqis do in that famous tent and so on, or what the Japanese did on board of an American ship. So how would this surrender take shape? Would all fighters need to come out and lay their arms, all of them? We don't know how many of them, maybe 10,000, whatever, so they come and they say, now we surrender. Is that the shape, is that the form of surrender that you are asking?
So let me give you a start. Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, could come up from his tunnel today, could lay down his arms and surrender himself and take responsibility. Now, I don't have any notion that he is about to do that. He hasn't shown that he cares one whit for the Palestinian public up to date. So I have no reason to believe he would do that. But I make the point to, again, reinforce that Hamas does bear some responsibility, a great deal of responsibility for what happened here as the person who started this conflict in the first place.
And my last question on the journalists, the number of journalists. A lot of journalists have been killed, maybe 90 and so on. Do you have any doubt that Israel intentionally targets journalists?
So we have not seen evidence that Israel, usual rule, let me finish. We have not seen any evidence that Israel is intentionally targeting journalists. Obviously, we have seen dozens of journalists die as a result of this conflict. Saw one, Samer Abudaqa from Al Jazeera, who was just killed in recent days. And as we have said before, we mourn every journalist who has given their life in covering this conflict and bringing information to the American public and to people all around the world. We think the work that the Free Press does is critical to democracy, especially in conflict zones where, unfortunately, far too many do pay this sacrifice, and our condolences go out to all of their families. And there are cases where, when we have seen actions that we thought warranted, we have raised questions with the Israeli government and sought more information. You saw us do that with respect to the Reuters journalist who was killed in Lebanon. And we will continue to do so, and we will continue to encourage Israel to comply with their own rules of engagement and comply with international humanitarian law. And if we ever see signs that they are not, we will of course be very clear about that with them.
Go
ahead. Last one, Saeed, because there are a lot of other people.
You mentioned Samer Abudaqa. I mean, he was bleeding there for like 6 hours, and they sent in a crew to retrieve him. They were all shot dead. So they knew exactly where he was and what he was bleeding right there. People are trying to reach and retrieve him, and the Israeli army disallowed them from doing that. So wouldn't that be intentional?
So again, as always, it's very difficult for me to comment from specific facts here. We're in an extremely challenging information space when you see different accounts about activities on the ground. But as I said, we continue to be clear with Israel that they must comply with all international humanitarian law.